Hello again, everyone. I'm Marcus Overstreet, and this is my wife, Amy.
Hi.
Welcome to our home here in East Orlando. We live just 6 miles south of the mighty UCF campus, Charge on Nights. And it's hard to believe we've lived here now for 5 months. We moved here from Edinburgh, Scotland, and as much as I miss the bagpipes and the castles and even the kilts, we are very happy to be back in the sunshine. But no matter where you live in our world today, certainly everyone has been affected, Amy, by the coronavirus.
Yeah, and it's been about 2 weeks since we posted our last video, and a lot has changed here in Orlando in that time. Of course, the numbers of people infected has increased, and the number of people that we personally know that have had some connection with the virus has increased. In this time, our own county has been put on a stay-at-home order, so that means it's been a while since we've had anyone into our house. Our last supper, so to speak, was with Tony and Cassandra Fernandez, but since then it's just been the 5 of us and our little dog here, watching videos of church online and interacting with people via Zoom. I'm sure if you haven't heard of Zoom before, you've heard of Zoom now. So we've all been Zooming and trying to stay encouraged and encouraging others, waving to our neighbors from across the street and coming up with ways to be creative while we're at home, trying to figure out ways to live as Christians inside our house. And we're so used to doing it outside of our houses, whether it's at a church building or in small groups at other people's houses or at devotionals. And so we're figuring out ways to interact here from inside our house and live out the kingdom lifestyle from inside of our house. And that has been our theme as a church here in Orlando for the year, is seek first the kingdom.
Our theme for this year as a church comes from Jesus' famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And the beginning of this sermon by Jesus starts with the Beatitudes. And these are expectations of how to live the kingdom life, and in turn the rewards for living that type of lifestyle, to live and breathe the Beatitudes. And that's the expectation of Jesus, but there are some incredible rewards that come with that. Now today we're going to cover the 4th Beatitude. Now if you've missed some of the previous videos and lessons that we've done, we're going to have a link down in the description of this video, actually a couple of links to help catch you up to speed with what the kingdom is all about, and also the Beatitudes that we've covered thus far as well. But today it's the 4th Beatitude, and that comes from Matthew chapter 5, verse 6, where Jesus says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." And we're going to break this down. We're going to talk about what Jesus means by this, and then we're going to build a bridge to our lives today and figure out what the application would be for us in the year 2020. In the first half of this Beatitude, Jesus is hitting on 2 essentials of life. We need to eat or we'll starve. We need something to drink or we will die of thirst. Now this was very relevant to the times back then in Palestine, where starvation and hunger were very real issues. Now recently for us in this coronavirus time that we're dealing with this, it's more of a reality for us now, whether we're trying to get the groceries that we need, or if you're shopping online and you're filling up your cart with food and with drink. You want to get to the checkout of that cart before someone takes all your stuff out of the cart. And so that's a hunger and that's a thirst that we're just getting just a little bit of a taste of in our times today. But when we're talking about hunger and we're talking about thirst, these aren't just something on the side.
Yeah.
We're talking about core needs, and this is super important when we're breaking down this Beatitude. These are core needs of hungering and thirsting for something. Now, this is very important. Jesus here is not talking about physical bread and water, Jesus says there's a reward if you hunger and thirst for righteousness. Now, Jesus uses this term righteousness 7 times in Matthew 5, 6, and 7 in the Sermon on the Mount, Amy. So context here is very important.
Yeah, righteousness is a big word. It can sound like a religious word that we're supposed to understand. I think that I'll do my best right now to break it down for us and think about what it means for us in our lives if we're going to be hungering for it and thirsting for it. I like to think about the idea that it puts us in right relationship with God and a right relationship with people. And so when we read the rest of the sermon, we really get a glimpse into how God views us as humans, how he views our relationships with other humans. And the more that we can be like that, the more that we live the way that he describes in the rest of the sermon, the better we understand and show that we understand what righteousness is. We are recently transitioned back from Scotland, so I wanted to read, that's why I'm looking down, this quote. It says, his whole being echoes the prayer of a certain Scottish saint who cried, "O God, make me just as holy as a pardoned sinner can be." And that comes from D.A. Carson's Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. But that's a description of desiring righteousness, understanding that I am a sinner and I don't have a righteousness of my own. And so I hunger for it and I thirst for it and I need it and I wake up and think about it just the way I wake up and think about how to get my meals for the day. I think and wonder and desire and plan how to be more like God, how to love people the way that he loves people, to become forgiving the way that he is forgiving, and just to see humans the way that he sees humans, to look at humanity the way that God looks at humanity.
So I think it's fair to summarize what you're saying and what we're trying to convey about righteousness and what Jesus is saying in context in the Sermon on the Mount. It's to be in right relationship with God consistently and right relationship with one another, with those around you, whether someone is of a Christian faith or not. It's a righteousness that has so much to do, entirely to do really, with relationships. So if this is all about having a right relationship with God and a right relationship with one another and really hungering for that and thirsting for that, we must realize then, or make it a focus, that this is a core need in our life. This is not something that we just add on to our life or it'd be nice to have, but again, we live and breathe a desire for righteousness, like food or like drink. We hunger for it, we thirst for it. And so I think you hit on it, but it's what you wake up in the morning thinking about. How can I get close to God today? How can I feast on his word? How can it fill me up? How can I get in better relationship with others and seek them out rather than waiting for them to come after me? How can I resolve conflict? How can I treat someone with absolute purity? How can I give to another individual? It's really viewing one another as God does, as God views the Holy Spirit, as God views Jesus. They're all in relationship, in perfect relationship. That's what he desires to have with us, and that's what he wants for us to have with one another. Now, what I really love about this beatitude is it's not something that's beyond our grasp to achieve. There's so many things in this world that we can hunger for and thirst for, and there's no guarantees we're going to get that, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But with this one, the reward is 100% guaranteed. Jesus said, if you hunger and you thirst for righteousness, you will be filled. It's so wonderful to have a promise and something that you could put great effort into, Amy, and you know it's going to happen.
Yeah, and filled, what are we filled with? righteousness, because that's what we hungered for. Just the same way, if I hunger for something to eat, I'm going to be filled with food, not something else. So that's what we have to really wrestle with, is that what we actually hunger and thirst for is righteousness, or is it something else really that we're looking for? And it's so much more than just being a nice looking or religious appearing Christian. It's not hiding our sin so that we appear a certain way to other people. It really is about wanting our relationship with God and others to be the way that God intended.
And consider what many of us could hunger for today. I mean, some hunger for romance, for marriage, to start a family. Amy and I certainly hunger for financial security. I mean, we were caught 10 years ago in the housing real estate crash, and that burned us pretty bad. And so we thirst, we hunger to own a home if that's God's will, and to get in great financial shape. So that's something that we want. And people hunger for a better life. People hunger for good health. Especially during this time, so many of us are just thirsting and craving a cure and an end to this coronavirus. Now, some of those things may come true, but none of them are promised. And so you got to go back to, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because Jesus guarantees that if that's what we hunger for and we thirst for, we will be filled. If we pursue and we desire just a greater and greater relationship with God, to have this righteous relationship, these growing relationships with other people, we're going to get it. And I really like that. It's one of those promises from Jesus that when he makes a promise, he keeps it.
Yes.
And Amy, certainly now in the middle of this coronavirus, we have so many unique opportunities to hunger and thirst for righteousness right now.
Yeah, for sure. We have a lot more time. We're not spending our time driving places. We're not spending our time working outside the home. I know many of us are trying to adjust to a new normal, working at home and homeschooling and learning new technologies. But for the most part, there are many times that we've spent doing other things that we are home and we're available to think and to pray and to read our Bibles and to understand more deeply who God is and love him more and understand more about Jesus's expectations and how he lived and how he walked, and imitate him more. And obviously with our own families, we're in very close quarters, and so it can be really challenging, but it presents a great opportunity for living and learning about relationships with each other. Every time we have a bump in our family, whether it's with our spouse or with our kids, it's really a chance to learn what's already there, what's already in our hearts and deep inside our character, and it's presenting itself, and we can learn more about what is a better way that God has planned for us.
And it's good to remember we're in this together. We're not going to be perfect in this, but we do strive to grow. We want to hunger and thirst for the right things. We want to hunger and thirst for righteousness because there's a reward that comes with it. And so we have a wonderful opportunity to do this together and to think deeply about this and to focus more on this during these times. Now, to conclude, I want to share a scripture from Isaiah 55 that I feel really foreshadows this beatitude from Jesus. It's Isaiah 55, verses 1 and 2. It reads, "Come all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you have no money, just come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and your soul will delight in the richest of fare. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." As we close out the video here in a few moments, I'll share with you on the screen a few questions that you can reflect on individually, some questions as well that you can have group discussion with. We're so thankful that you've watched this video with us today. Until next time, we say goodbye, and please stay safe, stay home, stay connected to God, and stay connected to one another, and we'll see you again real soon.
Love you guys. Bye.